Hey everybody, it just dawned on me this might be quite an interesting thing to do. Let's look on Google at the most common questions about bikers and answer them. Because surely by doing this, I will answer most questions that most people who don't ride bikes have about bikes. Makes sense, right? So if we go, why do motorcyclists... Okay, so why do motorcyclists wear bright colours? To help them be seen. Why do motorcyclists wear leather? Because it's a very hard-wearing material, which is both warm, waterproof, generally, comfy, and yeah, it's good wear resistance on the road if you come off. Why do motorcycles backfire? This is to do with unburnt fuel going through the exhaust. It could be because of the pair valve, that being the emissions valve, or otherwise known as the EGR valve, which puts fresh air into unburnt fuel in the exhaust and causes it to backfire. It can also be because it's got a very open exhaust and any unburnt fuel is ignited in the hot chamber of the exhaust and causes backfiring. Many cars backfire too, and many people actually map their cars to do such things, and it normally just sounds awful because it's just so, I don't know, it's just something weird about backfires when they're engineered in. Why do motorcyclists use dipped headlights? The reason we use dipped headlights is because many bikes, you can't turn them off. It's a European leisure. Oh my god, I've just hit a wall. Let's try again. It's in my head. I can say it. Legislation. There we go. Jesus. It's a safety thing basically. If they're always on, they're always on. Some cars have it, but yeah, that's why we have dip lights on most of the time. Why do motorcycle helmets expire? The reason they expire is because materials break down. And the main thing, other than the shell becoming brittle and breaking, is the fact that the inner core is made of a polystyrene material, and that can become harder, and it means that when you have a crash, it doesn't absorb the shock from your head hitting the floor like it should. Why do motorcycles rev so high? They rev so high because they have smaller engines, smaller pistons, shorter stroke lengths compared to sort of cars and things, and thus they can tend to rev much higher. Plus, you need the revs to get the power out of them. There are some bikes which are lower revving and give you more torque, but then you also have bikes which are very high revving and give you the brake horsepower. Do motorcycles' exhausts have springs? Some do hold the midsections together using springs, yes. Why do motorcycles wobble? Speed wobble is because it can be an imbalance in the tyres. It can be to do with aero. The DRZ is known for getting a speed wobble at around 90, 100. I've had this once, and it was caused by wind started the nose fairing wobbling, and that just started to denote the bike a bit. And I just sort of held it there for a minute, and it was all right, went away. It can also, if you mean weave back and forth in your lane, it is not to heat your tyres up. That doesn't work. It's a fallacy that I used to think was true. The way you heat your tyres up is by accelerating and braking is how you warm tyres up. Wobbling around in your lane does nothing. But you can clean your tyres up a bit that way. If you've got gravel and dust and stuff all over them, if you go back side to side a bit, you can start to get that dust and gravel off. And just feel the tyre and make sure that there's nothing on it. So there are reasons to do it if you're about to go into some corners fast, just check that your tyres are okay. Why do motorcyclists look right? I don't know what that's referring to. Maybe it's because it's referring to shoulder checks, but then we shoulder check left and right. So, don't know. Why do motorcycle batteries die in the cold? They don't die in the cold. All batteries die in the cold. The damage is actually done in the summer by the heat, and then it is shown up in the cold. It's to do with the build-up of, I can't remember the chemical name, but basically on the plates, the metal plates inside your battery, a sulfate, I believe it is, builds up, and it reduces the ability of the battery to transfer electrons from plate to plate, and thus you have less charge in your battery, and eventually you get to a point you don't have enough crank power to start the bike or the car, and then your alternator can't keep up with it, and yeah, that's when you end up with what is known as a dead battery. They can be recovered if it's a lead acid battery with some methods. Abe's done a video on this. However, it's a stopgap thing, and most batteries here are now sealed because you can't get to the acid because of acid attacks that happened. Shoulder checking. Shoulder checking is basically to check your blind spot. You'll notice bikers when they get to junctions, corners, and before you pull away, you are taught to check over your shoulder. It's called a lifesaver, and it just basically means you're checking your blind spots. Why do motorcyclists nod at each other? It's just a camaraderie thing. You know, people with VWs might wave at each other or flash lights or anything, but with bikers, because you can't really take your hands off the control, although you can. In the UK, the problem is the side that you're facing each other when you cross, you're throttle to throttle. So if you wave at the person with that hand, right-handed, you're going to take your hand off the throttle. So in America, they'll use their left hand because they pass on the left to each other, left to left. So they, you know, as I say, they use their hands more often. In the UK, it's easier to nod at people, and that is why we nod. It's just, hey, see you're on two wheels, respect it, whatever you're on. That's the way I am. Some people are not like that. Why do motorcyclists lean into a corner? Physics is just required. We don't have flat tyres, they're round, and thus you will have to lean the bike. There's a lot of physics actually goes on into why bikes corner the way they do, and it's very interesting. Why do motorcyclists point to the ground? In some cases, that could be to point to an obstacle. That could also be them low waving in America at each other, where they're actually just like saying hi. But because they can't do like an actual wave, they have to do it as hard-assed as you can and just put a hand down. Why do motorcyclists change lane position? For a motorcyclist, in your lane you have three positions, position 1, 2 and 3, which is left, middle and right, and it is a way of seeing around corners, not being in the way, and also taking up your space for defensive riding. And turn, have L plates. L plates is the same on a car. It's when you're learning in the UK, it means you're under a CBT. Although when you're in a car, you're not under a CBT, you'll have someone in the passenger seat. But obviously you can't have someone in the passenger seat with you when you're riding a motorcycle. Although actually in some countries, in the UK, people are going to get amazed by this. Yes, in some countries, they have bikes where the instructor has dual controls on the bike and he sits on the pillion seat the whole time. Not steering controls, obviously, but he has, I think he has clutch and brakes, maybe even throttle, I'm not sure. But yeah, it's that would be weird. Why do motorcycles have wet clutches? Some don't, some have dry clutches, but generally wet clutches in motorcycles make most sense because they work. That's not a great answer. Maybe that actually should be it. Why do bikes use, what is the benefit of it? Well, I know what cooling and stuff like that is the benefits of wet clutches. Also, they don't go ching, 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 ching. Why do motorcycles have kill switches? To turn the engine off. It's also, I don't know if you know this, the reason why the toggle is always away from you, if you notice that toggle on all bikes, press towards you is for the engine to be on, press away is it for it to be off. The reason for that is simply so if you have a crash, because obviously you're going to go forward on the bike, you are more likely to knock the kill switch off. That's my understanding of it being in that way around. Why do motorcycles have bells? I've never seen a motorcycle with a bell other than people taking the piss. Why do motorcycles increase driving risk? Because you're not in a car with airbags and a seatbelt and a crash zone. Crumple zone, sorry. Why do motorcycles have windshields? To keep the bugs and wind off of you, although that's dependent on your height and how the bike is. Why do motorcycles have twist throttles? My imagining on this would be that if you had a thumb, well, I know quads have thumb throttles, but the thing is if you bump forward on that, on like a bump, you push the throttle. On a bike, yeah, you can twist the throttle, because they do. Why do wear an iron cross? That's obviously to do with Harley gangs or cruiser gangs. Why do bikers rev their engines? To move! Also to alert you of our location. Why do bikers have beards? Why do bikers have beards? They don't all have beards. I mean, I'm guessing because of bikers, again, as I say, this is probably more your Harley riders. Keep your face warm. Stop you being hit in the face and in the neck by bugs. I don't know. Wear chains. Well, the chain can be to hold your wallet in your pocket so you don't drop it. It can also be have a lump of metal on the end of it to smack into cars that get too close. I know people who did this. Why do bikers shave their legs? Because to get into their leathers better. I think they mean cyclists, but I don't know. Why do bikers kiss on the lips? Well, I mean, some do. Why don't motorcycles have front number plates? They used to back in the day. They used to be vertical over the mudguard. Now, I've heard a rumour which was that people used to split their heads open on them in crashes, but I can't imagine how you would end up in that position with enough force to do that. I think it would just crumble out of the way. But yeah, again, that's something I should look into in the future. Why don't motorcycles have reverse? Because the gearbox isn't designed that way. You'd have to have an awful lot of extra metal in there to have a reverse gear. It's not like a single extra gear on your drive shaft in a car. a combination of gears to reverse the forward movement of the engine. Although you can get electric reverses which use the starter motors, and you can also get hydraulic ones, I think. Why don't motorcycles get pulled over? You might want to check YouTube on that one. Why don't motorcycles have seatbelts? Because I think generally it's safer to be away from the bike. Most people want to be away from your bike in the crash. Also, if you hit something, oh God, oh the G-forces, basically, because that would make everyone a paraplegic or dead. Why don't motorcycles fall over? Side stand, good balance, magnets, opposing winds which are just holding up. No, it's the centrifugal force of the wheels have an inertia to them that help keep the bike upright. Terminology there might be a bit iffy. Why don't motorcycles have automatic transmissions? Lots of them do. Scooters, Bergmans. There's different types of automatic transmissions as well. You have things that are continuous and stuff that are like fake manuals. And then you have like, I think some might even actually have manual boxes that automatically change, but it's kind of different. Why don't motorcycles last as long as cars? Well, probably because people crash them before they get to 100,000 miles, or people don't use them as much as cars. But they do, you know, there's bikes out there with 100,000 miles on them easy, and there's some very, very old bikes out there as well, which are still going, which don't have many miles on them. So it's a bit of a fallacy. Probably because when they get crashed, they most likely get written off, but other than a car, which more regularly gets fixed, depending on the insurance and stuff. Why don't motorcycles have fuel gauges? Some do, some don't. Main reason we don't is because there's a petcock. I have a video on this which has annoyed a lot of people, and you can also tell when a bike's running out of fuel whether it's got injected or it's carbed. I know a lot of people will disagree with me there, but I can feel it on all my bikes, including my injected ones. There is a definite difference when you're starting to run out of fuel. Why don't motorcycles have catalytic converters? They do. Many of them do. But you don't have to keep them. You can remove them generally until they might make... That's one of the laws that might come in, that we can't remove cats off bikes because of emissions. Then it'll be an NCAN only thing. Can motorcycles ride side by side in the UK? No, you shouldn't really. You should be single file. You are not a push bike. They are allowed to do that in some places, but you shouldn't really. You should be staggered with about a bike's length in between. Left, right, left, right, left, right. Well, a bit more than that actually. Left, right down the road if you're going to be riding in tandem, as it were. Can motorcycles use bike lanes? No, in most places, to my understanding. Depends where you are. In the UK, no. Can motorcycles use bus lanes? Only in certain places like London in the UK, I believe. Don't think I can do it down here. Can motorcycles use split lane? Don't know. Can motorcycles get wet? Yes, they can get wet. Be automatic, run side by side, be safe. Can they be safe? Yes, they can be perfectly safe. You just don't ride it, and then there is no danger to anyone. Can motorcycles go on the motorway? In the UK, yes, if you have an A2, an A1, or a full A licence. You cannot with a CBT, full stop, but you can go on dual carriageways with a CBT on a 125 or a 50cc. But you cannot take a 50cc on a motorway. You can only take 125cc's on a motorway, even if you've got full licence. Can motorcyclists drive between lanes? Yes, we are allowed to do that in certain places. It's called filtering or lane splitting. Some places say it's not legal. Weave in and out of traffic. It's not weaving in and out of traffic is one difference. Americans on the highway weaving between cars at 90 mile an hour, like 20 or 30 mile an hour, everyone else can going between like 4 and 5 lanes at a time. No. Overtaking someone where there is a gap to do so in the road between vehicles, yes, is allowed in certain places. Are they allowed to undertake? No. But we can filter on the inside in certain circumstances, like if you're indicating off right, we can pass you. But you've got to be careful if you're doing that, because they might be letting someone pull out, so you don't want to go flying past the left-hand side of someone indicating, because you might meet a car right there that you can't see because of the car in between. Can motorcyclists have balance problems? Not really. Yes, if you filled all your panniers on one side and with lead and nothing in the other. Can learner motorcyclists use motorway? No. When can motorcyclists ride through rest? They never can. Anywhere. Off-road. And on Mars. 3 abreast is allowed there. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button, subscribe if you're new here, and if you want to help support this channel, please do that. through Patreon, links in the description. I know it's a little bit different to a lot of the stuff that I do, but it suddenly dawned on me this might be quite interesting and answer loads of questions really quickly. So there you go. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.